today to co-sponsor the committee report on the act establishing the Classroom Building Acceleration Program or CAP. Isang panukalang batas na tutugon sa matagal na nating problema sa kakulangan ng classrooms sa bansa upang mabigyan lahat ng bata, lalo na mga mag-aaral na galing sa mahihirap na pamilya, ang pagkakataong magkaroon ng edukasyon at maging matagumpay sa buhay. This proposed measure is not only timely, but it will also save the government millions of funds for classroom building na dati-rati nabubuhos lang sa DPWH, isang ahensyang tadtad ng anomalya ngayon. By providing an alternative mechanism that is more responsive and cost-efficient, and by forging credible partnerships between local government units or LGUs and private sector entities.
Classroom shortage was then 127,039. The budget needed to build these classrooms was 317 billion. The budget allotted in the NEP was only 5.92 billion. So from 317 needed, 5.92 billion. And with this budget, it would take us 60 years to fill the gap.
Nasabi ho ni Senator Pia na talagang napakalaki po ang backlog natin sa classrooms. 160,000 ang kailangan natin para mahabol lang yung backlog natin sa classrooms.
Nung ako po ay bumoto noong nakarang eleksyon, isa sa mga hindi ko po makakalimutan ay ang kalunos-lunos na kalagayan po ng ating mga silid-aralan. Mainit, siksikan, at minsan pa ay kulang sa upuan. Sa ganitong kalagayan, mahirap asahan na matuto ng maayos ang ating mga kabataan, Mr. President.
Today to co-sponsor the committee report on the act establishing the Classroom Building Acceleration Program or CAP. Isang panukalang batas na tutugon sa matagal na nating problema sa kakulangan ng classrooms sa bansa upang mabigyan lahat ng bata, lalo na mga mag-aaral na galing sa mahihirap na pamilya, ang pagkakataong magkaroon ng edukasyon at maging matagumpay sa buhay. This proposed measure is not only timely, but it will also save the government millions of funds for classroom building na dati-rati nabubuhos lang sa DPWH, isang ahensyang tadtad ng anomalya ngayon. By providing an alternative mechanism that is more responsive and cost-efficient, and by forging credible partnerships between local government units or LGUs and private sector entities, mas mapapabilis na po ang pagpapatayo ng classrooms at makasigurong mapupunta sa tama ang pondong nakalaan para rito. We have a backlog of almost 165,000 classrooms. At base sa mga datos na isinumite sa atin, kakailanganan natin ng almost 15 years, 15 taon po yan, isang dekada at kalahati, upang matugunan ang problema sa classroom shortage. Ang masaklap, sa nakaraang taong 2024, nasa 3,181 classrooms lamang ang nakumpleto. Sa makatuwid, at the rate we're going, we will need at least 50 years to hit our target. Now is the time to change the system and approach the problem differently in a manner that is more realistic, cost-efficient, and reliable. Ngayon pa lang, tinatalang 3,260 classrooms ang nagtamo ng iba't ibang antas ng pinsala dahil sa bagyong Tino. Ayon yan po sa DepEd. At noong linggo, dahil sa bugso ng bagyong Uwan, DepEd reported that in Bicol and Calabar Zone alone, 1,182 classrooms were partially damaged, 366 heavily damaged, and 261 were totally destroyed. Habang tayo ay dinadaanan ng mga bagyo buwan-buwan, patuloy din na nadadagdagan ang datos sa classroom shortage. Kung hindi tayo gumalaw ng mabilis, maaaring hindi makapag-aral na maayos sa isang taon ang karamihan sa ating learners. In response to this situation, it is noteworthy to highlight Section 5, Paragraph D of the proposed measure. Schools located in high-risk or disaster-prone areas, such as those vulnerable to flooding, earthquake, or other similar calamities, and those reliant on temporary learning spaces, shall be prioritized under this program. Isa lamang ito sa mga magagandang probisyon ng panukalang batas na mabibigyan solusyon sa problema ng classrooms sa panahon ng kalamidad. Excuse me. I welcome the proposed partnerships between LGUs and NGOs upang agad matugunan ang problema ng classroom shortage under the able guidance and authority of the DepEd, na siya naman talagang nakakaalam kung ano talaga ang kailangan at naangkop sa mga mag-aaral ng iba't ibang lugar sa Pilipinas. Under this bill, DepEd minimum performance standards and specification will ensure that classrooms shall be built taking into serious consideration all relevant factors like topography, climate conditions of a given area, digital connectivity, and access to transportation, such that these projects are structurally sound, and given that schools are also being used as evacuation centers during calamities. At huli sa lahat, napapanahon na magkaroon ng funding ang cost ceilings sa mga gastusin sa construction ng classroom. Under this bill, funds for projects under this measure shall not be bloated and wasted. Tama na yung mga kumikita sa mga construction projects. Mr. President, education is the cornerstone of national development, social stability, and economic progress. Hence, it is imperative to strengthen our educational system by building these much-needed classrooms at the soonest possible time. Kaya, nagpapasalamat po ako kay Senator Bam Aquino, the chairperson of the Committee on Basic Education, for prioritizing this concern. With the passage of this bill, nakaasa tayo na mas marami ng batang Pilipino ang makapasok at makapag-aral sa mga susunod na taon. Again, maraming salamat kay Senator Bam Aquino sa pag-sponsor ng napakagandang bill na ito.
May I rise to co-sponsor Senate Bill number 1482 under Committee Report number 6. This bill seeks to address the country's classroom shortage by authorizing eligible LGUs and the civil society organizations to implement classroom construction projects using government funds complementing existing DepEd infrastructure programs. The shortage of classrooms have been a perennial problem in our education system, and I have long advocated for the acceleration of classroom constructions. In 2022, as the Senior Vice Chair of the Committee on Finance, handling the budget of education, I presented data during our DBCC briefing on classroom shortage. The classroom shortage was then 127. Can I wait for the slide to be shown? The classroom shortage was then 127,039. The budget needed to build these classrooms was 317 billion. The budget allotted in the NEP was only 5.92 billion. So from 317 needed, 5.92 billion. And with this budget, it would take us 60 years to fill the gap. My bold proposal then at the start of this administration was to consider closing the classroom gap by budgeting 52 billion per year. Sounds like a lot, right? But nowadays, we know that 52 billion can be produced pag kailangan pala. At mukhang mas madali kung may mali siya. Sorry, I had to say that as part of this speech because that's how people understand these numbers these days. So here we are, 3 years later, Just a few weeks ago, I also presented in the DBCC briefing hearing. According to the DepEd, the classroom shortage is now 165,000. So from 3 years ago na 127,000, ngayon 165,000 na. Kasi marami pa rin tayong mga anak, mga kababayan. Budget needed to fill the shortage is 412.50 billion. So nadagdagan na ng around 100 billion. And the budget in the NEP for 2026 is 13.25 billion. So with this year's budget and with a cost of 2.5 million per classroom, only 5,300 classrooms will be built. I will repeat. What is needed is 165,000, and what will be built based on this year's budget is 5,300 classrooms. With a similar budget, it will take more than 31 years to fill the gap. This shortage means that millions of Filipino students continue to study in congested, makeshift, or unsafe learning conditions that hinder learning outcomes. To repeat, and I just would like to emphasize this, in 2023, the budget for classrooms in the GAA was 15.60 billion. This is the General Appropriations Act. In 2024, it was 24.70 billion, and in 2025, it was 13.25 billion. So barely a sliver of what was needed. As chairperson of the Committee on Sustainable Development Goals, Innovation and Futures Thinking, I foresaw the opportunity the pandemic presented and the shift to online classes. While our students were at home, I proposed that we take advantage of that period and push for school building, repairs, and rehabilitation. However, our studies revealed that there was low utilization of funds by the DPWH, many other problems, including lack of preparation of the land, lack of buildable space in the most congested areas where the classrooms were most needed. These issues continued through the years. It was a missed opportunity, Mr. President, because that would have been the perfect time to address our classroom backlog, an effort that could have significantly reduced the numbers we are grappling with today. As Senior Vice Chairperson of the Committee on Finance that handles the budget of DepEd, that has handled the budget of DepEd for 6 years, our committee was able to assess how we could allocate more resources toward classroom construction. We pushed for the augmentation of the budget for classroom construction, repairs, and rehabilitations. In the NEP, we had allocations for budget repairs that were not fully funded, and we felt that these were very low-hanging fruits because it would take less to repair these classrooms. As mentioned earlier, we had consistently pointed out that with the limited budget under the Basic Education Facility Fund, it would take years for this gap to be addressed. Recognizing that many existing school buildings are already in disrepair, we also advocated for more rehabilitation and retrofitting. In several budget deliberations, we emphasized the need for climate-resilient school infrastructure, facilities that are safe, inclusive, and conducive to learning for all students. Closing the gap in the classroom shortage helps us achieve the following Sustainable Development Goals, particularly SDG 1, no poverty, SDG 3, good health and well-being, SDG 4, quality education, SDG 6, clean water and sanitation, SDG 8, decent work and economic growth, SDG 9, industry, innovation, and infrastructure, SDG 10, reduce inequalities, SDG 11, sustainable cities and communities. By accelerating the classroom construction, we are not only investing in building, we are investing in human capital and in the learning environment that nurtures the next generation. This program must not only fill present gaps, but it must also anticipate the future of learning. That means classrooms designed for blended learning, for energy efficiency, and for climate adaptation, especially in flood or typhoon-prone areas. We'd like to thank our chairperson, Senator Aquino, for prioritizing this bill. Let us make the classroom building acceleration program not just a response to a backlog, but a vision for the future of Philippine education. Thank you, Mr. President.
Congratulations. Let me congratulate and commend Senator Aquino for coming up with this very novel but very timely concept. Nasabi ho ni Senator Pia na talagang napakalaki po ang backlog natin sa classrooms. 160,000 ang kailangan natin para mahabol lang yung backlog natin sa classrooms. And that will cost approximately about 400 billion pesos. So kahit na mayroon tayong 400 billion pesos, Mr. President, hindi naman may implement kaagad because of absorptive capacity of the Department of Education. So the CAP program will liberalize the implementation of classrooms in our country, allowing local governments to build classrooms all at the same time. Yun po yung maganda dito, pwedeng sabay-sabay ho nagko-construct ang mga local government units para sabay-sabay rin natatapos. They can also tap the private sector to build dahil nakita ho natin sa hearing na mas mura ang private sector pagko-construct ng mga classrooms, so we can tap CSO. And we can also come up with innovative modalities such as PPP para pumahabol natin yung 165,000 na backlog natin. So, Mr. President, let me again thank and congratulate our chairman of the Basic Education Committee for coming up with this very timely concept. And a more extensive co-sponsorship speech will be submitted to the body to be inserted into the records, Mr. Chairman.
President, distinguished colleagues, I rise today to express my full support as co-sponsor of Senate Bill number 1482 under Committee Report number 6, which seeks to establish the Classroom Building Acceleration Program or CAP under the Department of Education. Nung ako po ay bumoto noong nakarang eleksyon, isa sa mga hindi ko po makakalimutan ay ang kalunos-lunos na kalagayan po ng ating mga silid-aralan. Mainit, siksikan, at minsan pa ay kulang sa upuan. Sa ganitong kalagayan, mahirap asahan na matuto ng maayos ang ating mga kabataan, Mr. President. Sa panukalang ito, binibigyan kapangyarihan ng mga lokal na pamahalaan at mga civil society organizations na makibahagi sa pagpapatayo ng mga silid-aralan. Isang konkretong hakbang upang mapabilis ang pagpapatayo ng mga ligtas, maayos at komportableng lugar para sa ating mga mag-aaral. Naniniwala po ako, Mr. President, na sa tulong ng programang ito, mas mabilis na maihatid ang dekalidad ng edukasyon, hindi lamang po sa salita, kundi sa mismong pisikal na espasyo kung saan nagsisimula ang kanilang mga pangarap. I would also like to thank Senator Bam for championing this classroom building acceleration program. Thank you, Senator Bam. Thank you, Mr. President.
You know, with the number of sponsors and co-authors of this measure, it might as well pass it today. But nevertheless, because we have to follow the rules, we will have to suspend consideration and approve it afterwards. Yes, Senator Mahinang is recognized. Before I act on the motion.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd just like to thank our colleagues sa napakarami pong sumusuporta. Maraming salamat po. Alam ko pong maraming sumusuporta, hindi ko po ina-expect na marami po mag-co-sponsor at co-author. Thank you so much to our dear colleagues, and I hope this can be one of the measures where we can work together for the Filipino youth and the Filipino people. Salamat po.
Well, I have good news for you. Senate Bill 1482, establishing the Classroom Building Acceleration Program, of which you are the principal author of and sponsor, is included in the LEDAC. So even the palace is backing up your bill. So the LEDAC priority list, it's included there. So congratulations. Anyway, any motion, any objection to the motion to suspend consideration?
Colleagues, I rise to sponsor Senate Bill number 1483 under Committee Report number 7, which seeks to extend the duration of the Second Congressional Commission on Education, or EDCOM 2, thereby amending Republic Act number 11899. EDCOM 2 was established in 2022 to undertake a comprehensive national assessment of our educational system and to recommend structural reforms that would strengthen its quality, equity, and responsiveness to national needs. There is no doubt that the Commission has carried out this mandate in a manner that honors the intent of Congress. Its principal reports, Miseducation, the Failed System of Philippine Education and Fixing the Foundations, a Matter of National Survival, offer the most rigorous, data-informed diagnosis of our education sector in recent memory. These studies describe persistent and systemic deficiencies that require sustained national attention, including critically low early childhood program participation, a classroom backlog of 165,000 units, chronic textbook shortages, widespread stunting and undernutrition among our youngest learners, and high attrition rates in higher education. Crucially, the significance of EDCOM 2 lies not only in its diagnosis, but also in how it has acted on those findings. The Commission brought together national agencies, local governments, schools, research institutions, and civil society partners to translate evidence into reform. Its work has informed legislation, guided appropriations, strengthened administrative coordination, and established pathways for institutional development. In the 19th Congress, the work of EDCOM 2 contributed directly to the passage of 10 landmark laws that expanded access, promoted equity, improved quality across our education system. While its mandate under RA 11899 concludes in December this year, EDCOM 2 has not entered a period of winding down. Instead, it continues to move with full momentum, compelled by the understanding that while much has been achieved, significant work remains to build the education system our people deserve. Currently, the Commission is developing several measures, including those identified as priority bills under the Legislative Executive Development Advisory Council, or LEDAC, for the 20th Congress. These include, first, amendments to the Masustansyang Pagkain para sa Batang Pilipino Act to expand and sustain the National Feeding Program. Second, amendments to the Government Assistance to Students and Teachers in Private Education Act to broaden voucher coverage to students from kindergarten to grade 6. Third, amendments to the Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education Act to guarantee tertiary education subsidy eligibility to students who need it most. Fourth, amendments to the Teachers Professionalization Act to introduce practical components in licensure pathways and open multiple routes to teacher qualification. Fifth, amendments to the Local Government Code on Special Education. Fund, to align the SEF utilization with current education needs and to strengthen local education governance. And six, Classroom Building Acceleration Program Bill, just sponsored now and championed by EDCOM 2 co-chair Senator Bam Aquino, to close the classroom gap and to ensure adequate learning spaces nationwide. Informed by the work of EDCOM 2, I'm also honored to advance measures that address systemic gaps across basic, higher, technical, and vocational education, including the Last Mile Schools Bill, the modernization of the decades-old charters of CHED and TESDA to ensure that our institutions are aligned with the needs of the learners today. Beyond legislation, EDCOM 2's research has translated directly into program funding. Its recommendations on early childhood development resulted in an allocation of 1 billion pesos in the 2025 General Appropriations Act for the establishment of child development centers in 328 low-income local government units and 80 million pesos in scholarship support for the professional development of child development workers. The Commission also identified long-standing misalignment in professional education and licensure policies across CHED, TESDA, and the Professional Regulation Commission. This finding led to the creation of a tripartite council last month to harmonize curricula, training regulations, and licensure standards under a coherent national framework. Further, the Commission conducted hearings on education delivery in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, which underscored the need to clarify the respective responsibilities of national agencies and the regional government in implementing essential education and nutrition programs. Policy recommendations to strengthen coordination are now being refined. EDCOM 2 also served as a convener, bringing together DepEd, CHED, and TESDA in a historic first joint meeting to address system-wide reforms. As noted by TESDA Director General Jose Francisco Kiko Benitez, the Commission's evidence-based work encouraged agencies to move beyond their own little silos and work towards a more integrated education system. Undoubtedly, EDCOM 2 was the driving force behind the establishment of the Education and Workforce Development Group through Administrative Order Number 36, directly addressing the fragmentation identified in the Commission's Year 1 report and affirmed by the concurrent resolution passed by the Senate and adopted by the House of Representatives. This effective translation of research into reform is precisely what makes the role of EDCOM 2 indispensable. It has functioned both as a think tank and as a coordinating body, building trust and consensus among diverse stakeholders, including agencies, teachers, parents, and policymakers. To ground its recommendations, EDCOM 2 has commissioned 97 research studies, partnered with 91 organizations, conducted 44 workshops and consultations, 32 hearings, 9 site visits, and 3 benchmarking sessions or missions. This work was made possible through the dedication of its secretariat, led by its executive director, Dr. Carol Markey, and supported by its advisory council under the leadership of those who served as commissioners from both chambers of Congress, including this representation, together with Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, Joel Villanueva, Alan Peter Cayetano, Pia Cayetano, Chis Escudero, and Bam Aquino, as well as former Senators Sani Angara and Coco Pimentel, who served during the 19th Congress. While EDCOM 2 is on track to submit its final report and the National Education and Workforce Development Plan as it completes its 3-year mandate, the sustained implementation of its policy recommendations requires continued oversight. The task before us is to ensure that reforms are fully institutionalized. This need for continuity was affirmed by our key education agencies, DepEd, CHED, and TESDA, during the hearing of the Committee on Higher, Technical, and Vocational Education on October 8, where they expressed clear support for extending the duration of EDCOM 2. For these reasons, I respectfully submit for the consideration of this August Chamber Senate Bill number 1483, extending the duration of EDCOM 2 for an additional 2 years or until December 2027. This will provide the necessary time to complete the remaining legislative measures and to ensure the institutionalization of coherent and lasting reform across the system. We are at a moment when progress is within reach. The work has direction. The coordination is in place. The momentum is real. It is only right, Mr. President, that we see it through. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm glad to report back to the plenary my accomplishments in the recently concluded 151st IPU Assembly, which took place in Geneva, Switzerland on October 19 to 23. In attendance at the Assembly with me were Senator Raffytulfo as the head of the delegation and Senator Aimee Marcos, with the team upholding humanitarian norms and supporting humanitarian action in times of crises. I met with my counterpart delegates from Japan, Cambodia, and Myanmar and exchanged views on how we can further strengthen our government's friendship and cooperation. I also took this trip as an opportunity to meet and greet our kababayans working and living in Switzerland and France. Bilateral meetings in Japan. On the sidelines of the IPU Assembly, Senator Erwin and I met with Honorable Fuji Kazuhiro, who is a member of the House of Councilors of Japan. Bilang chairman ng Senate Committee on Migrant Workers, pinasalamatan po natin si Honorable Kazuhiro dahil sa magandang pagtrato ng Japanese employers sa 50,706 OFWs na nasa Japan, na malaki ang naitutulong sa ekonomiya ng Pilipinas sa pamagitan ng kanilang remittances. Isa sa mga napag-usapan po namin ang aging population ng Japan, at aking pong inirekomenda kay Honorable Kazuhiro ang posibilidad na magbukas na mas marami pang employment opportunities para sa Pilipino nurses and caregivers. Lalo na ang Pilipinas ay kilala bilang isang bansa na mapagkalinga at marunong manasakit sa mga nakakatanda. We also discussed Japan's public mass transit system, and Honorable Kazuhiro mentioned that Japan has manpower shortage in the transport sector. Iminungkahi ko na maaari silang kumuha ng Filipino transport workers upang makapagtrabaho sa Japan. We will recommend for DFA and DMW to conduct bilateral talks to their counterparts to address specific issues about these. At akin po itong tututukan, Mr. President. Bakit walang mga videos? Nasaan? Kanina pa wala. Cambodia. Nakipagpulong din po ako kina First Vice President Och Borit at T. Sokun ng National Assembly of Cambodia upang talakayin ang problema sa human trafficking ng mga Pilipino sa Cambodia. Mr. President, I encourage the government's cooperation to put an end to the prevalent Cambodia-based scam hubs which abuse Filipino workers. Ang mga Pilipinong biktima ay naakit sa mapanlinlang na social media post na nag-o-offer ng malaking sahod, pero pagdating sa Cambodia ay hindi naman sila nababayaran ng tama at ang iba sa kanila ay nato-torture. I'm glad to report, Mr. President, that President Borit gave his commitment in solving this international issue. Myanmar. I also met with the delegation of Myanmar to raise concern over the recent raid on a major online scam hub in Myanmar, where around 222 Filipinos are currently seeking rescue and repatriation. We talk about how Philippines stepped up to host a ASEAN earlier than planned. After Myanmar, the original host was unable to do so due to its ongoing civil war. Dahil sa patuloy na conflict at lumalalang humanitarian crisis, ipinahayag ko na ang kaligtasan at kapakanan ng mga OFWs sa Myanmar. Ang isa sa aking mga prioridad, at sana sa tulong ng kooperasyon ng mga bansa sa ASEAN ay tuluyang mabawasan at mapigilan ng mga operasyon ng mga online scam hubs. Switzerland. Habang ako po ay nasa Geneva, nagipagkumustahan po ako sa ating mga kababayan na nagtrabaho at naninirahan doon. Mr. President, kasama si Sen. Erwin, we held a meet and greet with Filipinos at the Philippine Consulate General Office, all thanks to Ambassador Carlos Soreta. Bukod sa mga problema ang idinulog sa ating mga kababayan doon, ipinadala ko rin sa kanila ang kahalagaan o ipinaalala ko rin sa kanilang kahalagaan ng isinusulong kong Senate Bill number 90 o OFW Financial Education Act na layong mabigyan ng sapat na kaalaman ng mga OFW sa pag-manage ng kanilang pera. Ito ay para rin masiguro na hindi sila malulubog sa utang at may maayos na buhay pagbalik sa Pilipinas pagkatapos mag-retire sa trabaho sa abroad. I can say, Mr. President, that Filipinos in Switzerland are in way better condition than Filipinos working in other countries. Kasi nga po, halimbawa sa Hong Kong, marami po sa mga kababayan natin ang nalulubog sa utang. In fact, tumataas po yung bilang ng suicide sa bansang Hong Kong sapagkat hindi po alam ng mga OFWs natin kung paano nila i-manage ang kanilang finances. Marami sa kanila ang utang ng utang or dili kaya ay ginagamit sila bilang magbabouch sa mga kakilala at ng pagdating ng oras ay yung kakilala nila na kanilang binouch sa utang ay hindi nagbabayad, doon na po pumapasok yung sila ay nadidepress hanggang sa sila gumagawa ng hindi tama against doon sa kanilang sarili. Paris, Personal ko rin kinumusta ang ating mga kababayan sa France. Kasama ko si Ambassador Eduardo Jose de Vega at Consul General Noemi Diaz. At bilang Chairman Senate Committee on Migrant Workers, ibinahagi ang aking panukalang batas gaya ng pagtatag ng Migrant Workers Relations Commission, isang special court sa loob ng DMW upang mapabilis ang pagresolba ng mga kaso ng ating mga OFW nang hindi na kailangan dumaan sa mahabang proseso o magsumbong pa sa aking programa. Pagtatag ng OFW Action Center sa bawat probinsya at malalaking lungsod upang lahat ng serbisyo mula pre-deployment hanggang reintegration ay nasa isang lugar na lamang. Pagpapalawak ng OFW Dependent Scholarship Program mula sa dating 5,000 slots ay gagawin nating 10,000 slots upang mas maraming anak ng mga OFW, hindi lamang sa koleyo, kundi pati na rin mula elementarya hanggang high school ang makinabang. Sa Open Forum ay natalakay ang kakulangan ng trabaho sa Pilipinas na siyang pangunahing dahilan kung bakit maraming kababayan natin ang napipilitang mangibang bansa. I shared that this problem is precisely what I'm pushing for, an across-the-board minimum wage for workers in Metro Manila and the provinces. With this, workers across the country will have the access to good job opportunities without the need to migrate elsewhere. That's all, Mr. President.